श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मुक्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So we were looking at verse number 11. Mahi dehabhrita shakyam tyaktum karmani asheshatah yastu karma phalatyagi saha tyagi iti abhidhiyate. So it is impossible for someone alive. Dehabhrita means someone possesses a body, so any person alive, to give up karma completely. Asheshataha karmani tyaktum. So it is impossible. Yastu karma phalatyagi saha tyagi iti abhidhiyate. So that person who mentally does action with Ishwararpana buddhi. So that is karma phalatyaga. So without being excessively focused on the result. So whether it is success, failure, victory, defeat. So doing it purely with the attitude of Chitta Shuddhi. Using karma for purifying myself. So that is the only intention which this karma phalatyagi does any karma. And such a person is called a tyagi. Because as we are seeing a discussion about a tyagi and a sannyasi. So tyagi, and we are discussing about, Lord Krishna is discussing about a tyagi. So whether it is, so we saw what is Satvika Tyaga, Rajasa Tyaga, and then Tamasa Tyaga. And this person, Akushalam na dveshti. So that karma which is not convenient, so which is not enjoyable. So this person does not avoid that karma, na dveshti. And kushale na anushajyate. And is not always looking for karma that will only be enjoyable to him. Because it will happen that it is always a mixture. So certain things are enjoyable, certain things are not. So your focus is not on whether it is enjoyable, whether I like doing it or I do not like doing it. I just do it because it is necessary, and this is the only way to get Chitta Shuddhi. See, Chitta Shuddhi, we talk about it a lot. It's purification of the mind. It's a very abstract thing. How do you purify the mind? So we can purify the body. So you can apply some soap. So, or you can put some perfume to make it smell good. And so you can clean up the body, you can purify the body. But this purification of the mind is a very not very well understood. So the whole of the Gita spends a lot of time on the necessity of purifying one's mind, so that it can be made ready for receiving this knowledge. And how to purify one's mind? Only Karma Yoga. So if at all one is interested in this knowledge, then Karma Yoga is the only way. So doing what needs to be done. So without avoiding what you don't like, if it has to be done. And not always seeking to do what you like to do. Na dveshti akushalam karma, kushale na anushajjate. Tyagi sattva samavishtaha medhavi chinna samshaya. So this tyagi, karma phala tyagi, sattva samavishtaha. So he is full of sattva. So one who has a pure mind. So pure mind is only in terms of being focused on this knowledge. So that is a pure mind. Not focused only on the result, because results are incidental. They will come and go. So certain things I'm successful, certain things I'm not successful. So it will always be the case for everyone. I cannot be successful in everything. But at the same time, if I allow myself to be impacted by whether I'm successful or not, if my self-image depends upon whether I'm seen as successful, then that is a problem, because Lord Krishna says that it is completely irrelevant whether you're seen as successful or you're seen as a failure. That is something that you have assumed upon yourself. Bhagavan is not asking you to be successful. So I think I need to be successful. I have just concluded that I need to be successful. Who tells me or who forces me to be successful? So I'm not here to be successful or be victorious in whatever I do. That is not the purpose of my being here at all. So the purpose of my being here is to evolve. And that is completely unconnected with being successful. So never chase success. Success is a mindless wild goose chase to be successful. And that is also success as I define it. So success, the way I'm conditioned to think about success. So everyone has a different idea of success. So one person wants to be successful in one direction. Someone wants to be successful in a completely different direction. So we have infinite definitions of success. So that is something that I have conditioned myself to think in a certain way. So here he says, na dveshti akushalam karma, kushale na anushaljati. Whether it will bring you success or failure in the way you have assumed. So that is immaterial for your own purification. So for your own readiness for this knowledge. So that is how a real tyagi operates. So one looks at only preparing oneself. So what will give me the ideal preparation for this knowledge? So that is the only intention with which one looks at life. And whatever choices one makes. So that is what he says. And then he says that because the discussion is between sannyasa and tyaga. karma phala tyaga. He says, where will you run away? So it is impossible. As long as you are alive, it is impossible for you to run away totally from karma. Some karma or the other, you will have to necessarily keep doing. So even if you take sannyasa formally, you still cannot run away. You have to at least do whatever is necessary for survival. So that you have to do. So that's why he says, Nahi deha bhrata shakyam tyaktum karmani asheshataha. Same verse, same idea that was said in the third chapter of the Gita. Nahi kaschit kshanam api jatu tishtatya karma krite karyate hi avashak karma sarva prakriti jair punai. So third chapter, first verse. So, like I said, this chapter is like a summary. It's like a conclusion. So same idea was conveyed in the third chapter. A lot of what Lord Krishna is going to talk about is already conveyed, but he is summarizing. So summarizing, not repeating the same verses, but expressing it in a slightly different. So it will be good for us to remember what was there in what was said in the earlier chapters. So that is how a real summary is useful. So if you remember what was said earlier. So nahi kaschit kshanamapi jadu tishtatya karma krite karyate hi avashak karma sarva prakriti jair gunai. Here he says nahi deha bhrata shakyam tyaktum karmani asheshata. Yastu karma phalatyagi saha tyagi iti avidhyate. So deha bhrata, for someone who is alive, karmani asheshataha tyaktum na shakyam. So it is impossible to give up karma completely. That person who does what needs to be done, but still is not excessively focused on the result, on what it will give me. Give me in the short term. So give me in the immediate future. So that is not a karma phala tyagi's concern at all. So a karma phala tyagi's concern is only chitta shuddhi. So what I get in the immediate future, in the short term, is not my concern at all. So that is why when people talk about Gita for productivity, Gita to be successful, that is absolute nonsense. So because Gita is not meant to make you successful. Incidentally, you may be successful because of some attitudes that you learn from the Gita. But the goal of the Gita is not to make you successful. So Gita talks about something bigger than that, far greater than that. So Gita talks about Chitta Shuddhi. So purifying oneself, Gita talks about freedom from the cycle of birth and death. So that is the whole message of the Gita. It is a moksha shastra. So it is not meant to make anyone successful. Because Krishna keeps repeatedly saying, so don't be bothered about whether you are successful or not. Why will he be saying that? If the intention of the Gita is to make you successful. So then he will be talking about how you should be successful, how you can be successful. So the Gita is a moksha shastra. It is meant for gaining freedom from samsara. Success and all that, it is irrelevant. That is what the Gita says. In the bigger picture, in your journey of existence, success and failure are insignificant. So look at, look at the bigger picture. So that's what he says here. But normal human being, for a normal human being, success is a very important thing. So a little bit success is necessary so that you have a good self-esteem. So you have the required self-image you have. So that you are not a very diffident person. You have at least the confidence to study and be able to understand. So that much self-esteem one should have. So success is necessary only to gain that much. Beyond that, it is irrelevant. For necessary self-esteem so that you can pursue this knowledge. So that is what he's saying here in verse number 11. And next few verses. So it is a very beautiful analysis of karma. What really is work? So again, it is a summary of what we have seen, a beautiful summary. So what is work, and what are the different kinds of results that I can get from work? So that is going to be the subject of analysis in the next few verses. So these are all very important, but a little abstract. So only a person who has a certain amount of subtle thinking will be able to see the value in this kind of analysis. So otherwise, it will not appear very worthwhile. But anyway, we are all interested, so that is why we will look into this. So verse number 12, Lord Krishna says, Anishtamishtam mishram cha trividham karmanah phalam bhavatyatyāginām pretya na tu sannyasinām kvachit. So anishtam, ishtam, mishram, trividham karmanah phalam bhavati. For whom atyaginam pretya. So for someone who is not a karma phala tyagi. So here he is talking about someone who is outside this discussion. So who is neither a tyagi nor a sannyasi. So a person who is not a tyagi, for that person, there are three types of results. Results are karma phala can be classified into three categories: anishtam, ishtam, and mishram. And here he is talking about karma phala that one experiences after death. Pretya. Pretya means after death. So atyaginam pretya bhavati. So trividham bhavati. So it can be after one dies, one can go to a desirable place. So it can be either Swarga. Swarga or any other place where you don't suffer. There is no suffering. But if one has such bad karma phala, so one has done a lot of karma that one has to suffer for. So like Hitler probably. Or not that extreme. So certain things Like every day, I cannot live without non-veg. So I have to eat non-veg. So then you will be born as a fish or as a chicken. So there are some people for whom food is not complete without chicken. So it seems Shah Rukh Khan, he eats only tandoori chicken. He does not eat anything else. Recently, I read somewhere. So every day, a chicken has to sacrifice its life for giving nutrition to this fellow. So that means one will have to necessarily face the consequences, right? Because he has a lot of other options. So you can eat food without killing anything every day also. So, but still you choose to do it. Then you will have to face the consequences. See, if someone lives in a remote corner of the Himalayas, so deep in the Himalayas, like you go to Tibet, some places in Tibet, on the way to Kailash, there is absolutely not a dot of greenery anywhere. So there you cannot go and say that this you should be a vegetarian. It is impossible. But in other places, if you choose to do that, then you will have to face the consequences. So it can be anishtam. It can be so what will happen to you after death is either you are born in a place which is not very good. So anishtam, which you don't want. Or it can be ishtam. So you have karma which brings you certain experiences that you can enjoy. So that is ishtam. Or it can be mishram. So it can be a mixture of the two, which is human birth. So both anishtam and ishtam. So human birth is always a mixture. So it is anishtam and ishtam. So atyaginam. So for someone who does not do this karma pala tyaga, then you get one of these three outcomes. Outcomes after death. Okay. So one needs to be, so this person, he does activity with a very strong identification with the body, with a very strong ego identification with the individuality. So then you will get these three types of results. So if you are very strongly identified, for normal people, so the whole message that Lord Krishna wants to convey in these verses is that the doership is what matters. Kartritvam. Kartritvam matters, whether you are doing something as a karta or the kartritvam is subdued. So kartritvam is suppressed. So there is only the basic minimal amount of kartritvam while doing the karma. So that is the whole idea behind these verses. So for a karma phala tyagi, also there is kartritvam, but that kartritvam is minimal. For a person who is not even a karma phalatyagi, a normal person, the kartritvam is, there is a lot of kartritvam, there is a lot of ego, there is a lot of identification. That is why we give so much importance to what is happening to us. So what someone is telling us, how someone is talking to me, what is my self-image. So what is, whether I get respect. So all that becomes very important to a person who has kartritva, so who has doership. So then there will be, for someone who has so much kartritvam, there will be these three kinds of results. So anishtam, ishtam, mishlam. But for a person who is a karma phalatyagi, still this person is not a jnani yet. So the person is on the path. So, but the person is not a jnani. For that person, Lord Krishna has assured in the 6th chapter that even if you don't make it in this janma, you will come back and pick up from where you left. Prapya punyakritan lokan ushitva shashvati samaha shuchinaham srimadam gehe yoga bhrashtaha adhijayate athava yoginameva kule bhavati dhimatam tatra tam buddhi sanyogam labhate paurvadehikam. So for a mumukshu, so or a karma phala tyagi, so even if you don't make it, so whatever you do in this janma will not be wasted. You will never get an adogati. So it will always be a forward movement. So that is the assurance Lord Krishna gives. So because some people have this doubt. So what happens if I don't make it? See, I am willingly giving up all these worldly pleasures. So for the sake of pursuing this knowledge. But at the same time, I don't make it. So then it is, I lose out on from both sides. So I don't enjoy my life, have fun here. At the same time, I don't get moksha also. What Lord Krishna says, that is not true. So whatever effort you put in, that will always be added to you. So you will pick up from where you left. Even if you come back, you will pick up from where you left. So start in right earnest as and when you have the inclination to. So that is what he says. So that is for a karma phalatyagi and for a paramartha sannyas. So sarva karma sannyas. So Shankaracharya says there is no question because that person does not come back anyway. There is no doership. So there is Jivan Mukti and you don't come back. So this is what happens. So here we are going to talk about, or Krishna is going to talk about karma. So analysis of karma is already started. We look at verse number 13. Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodhame सांख्ये कृतान्ते प्रोक्तानि सिद्धये सर्व कर्मणाम he says there are five factors, five ingredients in every activity. Any activity involves five ingredients. Pancha, etani pancha, he Mahabaho, etani pancha karanani, Sankhye. Sankhye proktani. Sankhye kritante proktani. So, which is what have been told in the Vedanta Shastra. Lord Krishna himself. So, he is saying that I'm not coming up with this idea just out of the top of my head. So, this is exactly Vedanta Shastra that I'm talking about. Because Gita Shastra also has to be looked at from that angle. Because it is not Lord Krishna's personal opinion. So Lord Krishna is purely giving the message of the Vedanta Shastra. So Sankhya means Vedanta. So like we saw the second chapter also, the topic of the second chapter is called Sankhya Yoga. So Samyak Khyayate iti Sankhya. So Sankhya Yoga, that is Vedanta Shastra. And here he also gives some adjectives. So Kritan, one more adjective, Kritante. So Kritante means at the end of the ritual portion of the Veda. So which is Vedanta Shastra. So Krita means ritual. So Kritante at the end of the Vedas. So it is Vedanta Shastra. Sankhye Kritante Proktani Siddhaye Sarva Karmanam. So for being successful or for performing any activity, for doing anything for that matter. So there are five ingredients necessary. So this is, we've seen this in the fourth chapter also. So Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavihi, Brahmagnau, Brahmanahutam, Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhi. So there also he talks about various ingredients in the performance of any activity. And look at it as just an expression of consciousness. But still, the ingredients or the factors involved in any activity are also mentioned there. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahaviti, etc. So here also he is talking about the same thing in a slightly different way. Grammatically also. So if you have some understanding of Sanskrit grammar, so all the noun declensions are all talking about various factors connected to activity. Like the most important thing is the first. So karta. So the subject. So like Ramaha Ramau Rama. So Rama Shabda. So Ramaha Ramau Ramaha, that is the karta. Then the second is the karma. So Ramam Ramau Raman. So that is karma. And then Karanam. So Ramena Ramabhyam Ramai. So that is the instrument of used in the activity. Second is the object of the activity. So karma. Third is the instrument. And Ramaya Ramabhyam Ramebhya. Fourth is Sampradana Karta, recipient of the activity. So fifth is Apadana Karta, the origin of the activity. So Ramat, Ramabhyam, Ramebhyam. And then sixth is Sambandha, is not directly connected to the karma. So it is Ramasya, Ramayoho, Ramanam. And then the seventh is the location of the activity, location, topic, subject matter. So that is the or time at which the activity is performed. So that is indicated by the seventh case. So grammatically also, each of the declensions, it is connected to the activity in some way or the other. It is one factor connected to the performance of the activity. And the most important of all of this is the karta, is the agent. And here we are primarily focusing on the karta. And the whole mindset, the attitude of the karta. Because if the karta was not there, the agent was not there. So the other factors become irrelevant. If the agent was not there, then what is the relevance of the object of action or the instrument? The agent only has to use all of that. So only with respect to the agent, all the other factors become significant. Without the agent, the other factors become insignificant, so irrelevant. So that is why the most important in all the noun declensions is the agent. So one who is performing the activity, and that is the topic of discussion in these verses. So what kind of a person, what kind of attitude that agent should have while performing the activity? So that is why Lord Krishna is talking about it. So that's why he says, Etani pancha he mahabahu karanani sarvakarmanam siddhaye karanani iti sankhye kritante proktani. So in this manner, it has been said in the Vedanta Shastra. So what are the five ingredients of any activity? So that Lord Krishna will list out. So we will move to the next verse. See, this is such a beautiful, systematic, structured, and elaborate analysis of karma. Because it is not necessary to just say you do karma with Ishwararpana Buddhi, and then you will get Chitta Shuddhi. So that is one way of saying it. But then completely analyzing karma threadbare and then impressing upon the person as to why Chitta Shuddhi is necessary and why Kartritvam should be avoided. That is a much better way of teaching. So that is why he goes into this detailed analysis of what is really karma, what is really activity, what the hell is that? So we can ask, why am I put in this life of activity, thrown in this life of activity? So for that, you should also understand what is activity. So there the assumption is that I know activity. I know what is activity. But do you really know what is activity? So if we start questioning ourselves, what is really activity? Do I really know what it is all about? So then I can say, okay, activity means speaking or running or doing this, doing that. But what are the common ingredients of every activity? What are the fundamental principles involved in any activity. So that we generally don't go that far, don't go that deep. So that is why Lord Krishna says, I will analyze it threadbare, so that you don't ask me any question about activity anymore. So, like at the end of the book Gita, so Arjuna says, Nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadhan mayachyuta. So I don't have any doubt anymore. So my doubts are all completely cleared. So completely clarified. So I need to have that kind of clarity. So that is why we are doing this analysis. So we will read the next verse. Verse number 14. Adhishtanam tatha karta karanancha prithagvidham vividhascha prithak cheshtaha daivam chaivatra panchamam. So here he lists out the 5 ingredients of any activity. First he says adhishtanam. For performing any activity, the most important requirement is you should be alive. So you should not be a ghost. So if you have to be alive, then you need to possess a body. You can do something only if you have a body. So he says adhishtana. So down to the basics. So adhishtanam is the primary requirement for any activity. See, finally we will arrive at the conclusion that the ego that is involved in all these ingredients, that is what needs to be subdued. So that is what we are going to arrive at eventually. So the first is adhishtanam, and then once I have a body, then there is someone who is identified with this body. That is the karta. That's why I said in noun declensions also the most important thing is the karta, the agent. So that is the second ingredient or the necessary thing required for any activity. So kartritvam, adhishtanam, you have a physical body and then you have a kartritvam. If you don't have kartritvam, then you will not feel like doing anything. If you don't have an ego, you will not feel like doing anything at all. So you will just want to sit quiet without doing anything. So karta, but that is for a wise person. Just because I want to sit quiet without doing anything, it doesn't mean I don't have an ego. Because even for sitting quietly, that could also be driven by the ego. That I don't want to do, so I want to sit quiet. So it should neither be I want to do nor I don't want to do. So if I'm sitting quiet because I don't want to do, then that is an expression of ego. If I'm sitting quiet without wanting or not wanting, then that is jnana. So, but for doing anything, a certain amount of individuality, a certain amount of ego is necessary. So that's why he says karta, adhishtanam karta. So that is the second ingredient. And then Karanam. Karanam means the instrument required for performing the activity. Primarily, at least the mind. So that is the instrument. That's why it's called Antakaranam. So the mind you require for doing something. Mind has to be involved. And then later external Karanam also. External instruments also you have the tools required for performing the act. Instrument or tools. Suppose I want to go somewhere. So I need a car to go. So going somewhere is an activity. So the tool required or the instrument required is a car. So I go by car. And for anything you want to do, you need an instrument. So Karanam. So Adhishtanam, Karta, Karanam. Karanam cha Prithak Vidvam. So separate many kinds of instruments. So one instrument or multiple instruments. Prithak Vidham Karana. Many types of instruments. Vividhaha Prithak Cheshtaha. So the distinct and different ways the pranas operate. So that is the four. The pranas are also required for performing any activity. So you need to be breathing. So if you are in coma, then you cannot do anything. So you need to be breathing and you need to have the physiological functions working properly. Pratak cheshta. So physiological functions like digestion, circulation. So all of that need to be happening. Otherwise, you cannot do anything. Suppose I have indigestion, then I will not be able to do anything else. I will just be taking care of the indigestion. So that will not allow me to do anything else. So that is why pranas need to be functional. And then the fifth factor involved in any activity is Daivam. Daivam. So it is the blessing of the higher powers. That is also important in allowing me to do anything. So even for my various physical organs to function, so we see that there is a presiding devata over each and every organ. Like there is a presiding devata over the eyes. So presiding devata over the ears, for the ears. Presiding devata for tasting or for other sense organs and organs of action. All these capacities I have been given. So the presiding devata is letting me use these organs and taking my seeing for granted. But there is so much intelligence behind the functioning of the ears. So that means there is a presiding devata which is blessing me so that when I open my eyes, I can see. Or hearing takes place. Or smelling takes place. Or touching takes place. Or tasting takes place. And I can speak. I open my mouth, I can speak. So there is a presiding Devata. So then I can move my hands, legs. So all these functions have been given to me. So the presiding Devata has to bless me to do any activity. So this is the fifth ingredient, that blessing of the presiding Devata. So Daivam. So the five ingredients are Adhishtanam, possessing a physical body, and then Karta, the doer, the ego, and then Karanam, tools, instrument, and then the pranas, functioning of the pranas, fourth, and Daivam. So the capacity to use the various organs. The blessing to be able to use the various organs. So from the higher powers. So that is the fifth ingredient required for performing any activity. So here Lord Krishna says these are the five main ingredients for any activity, for doing anything. So then we'll move to the next verse. Verse number 15. So this is a very threadbare analysis of karma. So you cannot go any more fundamental than this. How does action really happen? And then you can have a clear idea. So you can have a lot of clarity about karma itself. Verse number 15. Shariravaং manobhiryat karma prarabhate naraha nyayam va viparitam va panchaite tasya hetavaha. So here he says, so nyayam va viparitam va yat karma sharira vang manobhihi prarabhate ete pancha hetavaha. So here he says that whether the activity that you do is legitimate or illegitimate, is good activity or not such a good activity. So these five ingredients are necessary. So because for noble activity also these five ingredients are necessary. For something not very good, also these five ingredients are necessary. It is not like only if the activity is noble, then the sense organs will function. Sense organs will function, the Devata will bless. So whether my intentions are good or not. And it is up to me to face the consequences. So that is what he says, that it is immaterial whether it is noble or not so noble, good or bad. But these five ingredients are absolutely essential. So nyayam va viparitam va. It is proper or legitimate. Viparitam va, or it is otherwise illegitimate. Yat karma. So that karma. Sharira vang manobhi. So karma can be performed either physically or orally or by the mind. So, but for oral and mental activity also you need a body. even though it can be performed by, or even performed orally or by the mind, with the mind. Still, you need to be identified with the physical body. So, but the karma, sometimes it can be purely a mental activity. If the body is not involved, like you are thinking about something. So that is a mental activity. Even meditation, it's a mental activity. So that is possible. And it can be an oral activity. You can be motivating someone. You can be making someone else do. So that will be an oral activity. And then it can be purely physical. So picking up something, going somewhere, and a pure physical activity. So any kind of activity involves, and whether it is legitimate or illegitimate, so good or bad, necessarily involves these five factors. Naraha Sharira Vang Manobhihi Naraha Prarabhate. So Naraha, a person begins, or a person engages in. Prarabhate Yete Pancha Hetavaha. So these five are the fundamental requirements for any activity. So what we've seen so far is there are five requirements, and then so these five requirements are required whether the activity is legitimate or illegitimate. So that much is clear so far. And finally, all this discussion is only to arrive at the intention with which I do the activity, whether I'm identified with the physical body or I do it for the sake of Chitta Shuddhi. So that is the primary uh, idea behind this whole discussion. So verse number 16. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam yah pashyatyakrita buddhitvat nasa pashyati durmatihi. So tatra evam sati. So Sanskrit way of saying so far so good. So that being so. So tatra evam sati means when that is so. That means so far, I hope it is clear. So tatra evam sati tu akrita buddhitvat. So because a person is not mature enough, akrita buddhitvat. Yaha atmanam kevalam kartaram pashyati saha durmati. A person who looks at the Atma as the Karta. Lord Krishna says that person is stupid. Durmatihi means that person is not thinking properly. Generally, we think like that. So I have an ego, and then I superimpose that ego on that consciousness. And then limit that consciousness to the body mind. So that is the mistake that is made universally. I superimpose the ego on the consciousness and then limit the consciousness. If a person thinks that the consciousness is performing this activity, then this person is mistaken. So this person is committing a mistake. Because the Atma does not do anything. It just remains a witness. It is just there. Whether you want to do something good or bad, it does not make any judgment. So Atma does not judge you. So it doesn't make any judgment. It just lets you do and face the consequences. So that is what it does. So that is the problem also. It's not a problem, but I have to take responsibility. So here, Lord Krishna says that if because you have erroneously superimposed the Atma on consciousness, you think the Atma is doing anything, then you are seriously mistaken. So then the thinking is seriously flawed thinking. So don't think like that. So that is what he says in this verse. We'll stop here and come back. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.